Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for coming. This is awesome. So that last clip of my kids in the back of the car, we filmed that multiple times. And Jake got asked the question, are you excited about the car? And they went crazy. And they just were jumping up and down, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. And then, but he didn't film it. So he said, okay, can we do that again? And he took the camera, and he points it at the camera and the kids in the back seat, and he says, so what do you guys think about this car? It's good.
It's good.
So we filmed that like 7 times to get to that point. Welcome to the Overtime Banquet Room. My name is Brian Wilson, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I can't help but notice that a group of educators is gathered here for a ceremony in a place called Overtime. Overtime seems more appropriate for a teacher than just about any other term, so good choice. I also like that this overtime is spelled with a Y, because it makes me think of my favorite question. Why? See what I did there? Anyway, here's why it's important. Because we as teachers are overworked and underpaid and stressed to the limit and bombarded from all angles by legislators and governors and the general public. And still, we put in the extra time, the overtime, because despite everything that seems to be frustrating and hopeless around us, we love what we do. I love what I do. I happened upon teaching as a career sometime during my undergrad years at Michigan State. My mom, who's right over there, hi Mom, thanks for coming. My mom can confirm that I never once expressed any interest in teaching while I was growing up. I didn't particularly like high school, so I always tell people it's more than a little ironic that the place I ended up working was high school. No, I was going to be a journalist. I loved to write from an early age. And I especially loved writing for the student newspaper at Farmington High School when I was there in the early 90s. I loved the rush that came over me on distribution days, when people would read my columns, which were on the sarcastic side, surprisingly enough, and I'd hear them talking about what I wrote. Once during the early autumn of my senior year, this was in September of 1991, I penned a column that was essentially a series of predictions. One of them, I stated very firmly, was that the football team would win 3 games. In fact, here's exactly what I wrote as a long-haired, wild-eyed 17-year-old pushing the envelope of obnoxiousness. With some degree of amusement, I went over the record of our stellar team and discovered a pattern that the common man surely would have missed. See, 3 years ago, the Falcons racked up a total of 0 wins. In 1989, they broke through for a single victory. Remember how everyone went nuts? It was the equivalent of, say, the Detroit Lions winning the Super Bowl. I actually wrote that. And last year, the team doubled that total as they finished the season off with 2 impressive victories. For those of you who haven't already skipped ahead in utter confusion, I'll get to the point. If this pattern continues, look for the team to win 3 games this year. Needless to say, some people weren't excited about my prediction, despite it being based on an airtight hypothesis. I quickly discovered a relatively serious flaw in my column, and it was this. Many of those angry people were also enormous. Corn-fed linemen with chips on their shoulders after suffering endless defeats over the previous few seasons. Going to school was a bit dicey for the next couple of weeks. The team actually ended up winning 4 games. And I'm still convinced they may have won the 4th solely to prove me wrong. They have since gone on to much greater success than the Detroit Lions, who won their last playoff game during that same fall of 1991. And have never so much as sniffed the Super Bowl. But the other reaction was the one that fueled me, that gave me hope, that made me realize that there were others like me. Of the 10 predictions I made that fall, only one was about the football team. The others dealt with questionable district purchasing policies, school clubs that no one attended, complaints about a new parking policy, pep assemblies that lacked enthusiasm, and, most intriguingly, cost-saving measures forced by a failed millage proposal. Here's what I predicted 22 years ago would be the results. Because of cutbacks, things became a little tighter than expected. Freshmen were forced to walk up to 6 miles to reach bus stops in order to save gas. Winter sports included basketball, and, well, included basketball. By the time spring rolls around, there are 3 teachers on the payroll, making $4.45 an hour, running the vacuum cleaner through the school, and cooking meals in the cafeteria. Sadly, of course, that all came true. Really, though, the reactions to my printed work changed my life. My friends, most of whom ran in the advanced placement circle, secretly told me they liked what I was doing, but generally looked nervous to be seen with me. Many of my teachers started casting suspicious glances in my direction, bothered by the fact that they couldn't predict what I was going to say next. People I had never met, who typically wouldn't have given me the time of day, were congratulating me for sticking it to the man and pointing out the flaws in the system. They were obvious flaws, granted, but I was being given a golden opportunity to say what was on my mind. I ran with it, and I never looked back. I realized even then that speaking out about injustice is one of the most important aspects of civic life, and I've always gravitated towards those who are similarly inclined. During my early teaching career, 3 people in particular helped shape me into the teacher that I am, the teacher and the person that I am today. Hal Farah, Ken Frankel, who's here, and Bob Schutz taught me what it means to truly be a teacher, each in his own way. I am indebted to them for their compassion, their ingenuity, their ability to light a fire under their students. Without them guiding my way, I don't think I'd be here today. I recognized this early on, and I also realized that an obligation comes with the gifts they gave. They always spoke to us youngsters, Dave Hyatt, Jason Frank, myself, about their own mentors, names that I've always held in reverence, but people that I never really knew. I imagine those teachers had heroes of their own, and this educational lineage can probably be traced back another 100 years before that. The trade-off, though, for gaining access to their wisdom is this. We have a responsibility to the next generation to help sculpt them into amazing teachers as well, so that they can eventually do the same. It takes a village to raise a child, they say, and it takes a village of teachers to raise a good teacher. And what about those children who we're helping to raise? Can we ever realize the full scope of our influence on their lives? Probably not. But social media has made it a little easier. Keeping up on the exploits and adventures of former students is one of the joys of this job. We all know that the gratification you might receive from teaching is nearly always of the delayed variety. Interactions with students that start out awful often turn out in the most wonderful ways. I mean, sometimes they start and finish awful. But other times, you just don't see the impact you've had until many years later. Often these conversations with our students are the ones we dread the most. They leave us in tears and wondering how the job could possibly be worth all of the heartache and stress. One of my former newspaper staffers, Kyle, is a good example. There was very little doubt that Kyle was heavily into drugs, mostly heroin, during high school. He was strung out most of the time, and I'm guessing everyone on our staff knew it, though for a while he denied anything was amiss. Because he was so likable and engaging, we all went out of our way to try to help him. But often, of course, people can't be helped unless they are able to help themselves. I can't tell you how many times we sat in my office tearfully running through various plans for him to get clean. These were conversations he was having with other people as well. None of these chats really worked, at least in the short term. Kyle ended up in rehab before too long. Eventually, though, thankfully, he got sober and has now been clean for 3 years. Recently, he told me about some of his darker days. He said, "On my first day back from my 3rd trip to rehab after my 7th overdose, I was going through a few boxes from school, and I found a piece of paper you made us pass around the class. Each of us would write a good quality about each of the other students on the paper. I found this piece of paper, Mr. Wilson, and I held it close to me, and I cried. It reminded me that even if I don't see the good in me, that others did, can. That piece of paper is in my wallet now, and it gives me strength. It reminds me I'm better and deserve better than where I put myself. Certainly many others have seen success as a result of their experiences on the publication staff. Here's just a sample. Carly is now an associate producer for the Queen Latifah Show after building her resume working for Oprah and Ellen. Carly may in fact have a rule that says she can only work for women for whom last names are unnecessary. I like that one too. She said, being part of a yearbook and newspaper allowed me to explore my creative side and develop the skills I would need to succeed in Los Angeles. You gave us the freedom to be self-motivated and take pride in our work. Dana is working as a sexual assault counselor for a nonprofit agency in Saginaw after graduating summa cum laude with a degree in social work. She said, you always inspired us to get out there in the world, take risks, find something to be passionate about. Allie spent a semester studying photography in New Zealand. She was there actually when she eventually switched gears and decided to get a degree in environmental science. She said, if you had not taken a chance on me and allowed me to be a staff photographer, who knows where I would be. Another Allie, who graduated from college in December, and has a job as the concerts assistant in the School of Music at Western Michigan University. She said, part of my job includes writing press releases for the School of Music events. If it weren't for my time on staff, I wouldn't have had so many of the skills that I require for this job. She is also, by the way, getting ready to write a press release for her singing debut at Carnegie Hall on February 1st. John has had photographic pieces selected for the New York Times and Fox Sports Photos of the Year compilations. He shot NFL playoff games, Major League Baseball opening days, and appearances by President Obama. He said, the confidence and respect you showed me gave me the confidence to pursue photography as a career option. Thank you for giving me the beginning I was looking for. Liz will be earning her journalism degree from Syracuse this semester, and then starts work with the Minneapolis Star-Tribune after previous gigs writing for Time Magazine and the Richmond Times-Dispatch. She said, working for the Murmur sparked something inside of me, a curiosity about life that only increases the more I write about and interact with people. It seems silly to think that a high school paper set the track for my entire life, but it did. Joining your staff 8 years ago was the single most important decision I ever made. Colin was just hired at the largest international law firm in Tokyo after stints at UAD Mercy Law School and teaching English in Japan for a year. He said, I believe I discovered the think outside the box attitude from my time spent on staff with amazing classmates and a crazy teacher. Ashley has been teaching middle school art for 3 years now and started a brand new yearbook program at her school this year. She said, if it wasn't for my amazing experience and memories in high school, I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't know if I'd be doing this today. You inspired me to become the teacher I am. Jana, who is here with us today, has followed more closely in my footsteps than any student I've had thus far. After graduating with a journalism degree from Michigan State, sounds familiar, she took a job teaching high school English and advising the yearbook. Also familiar. She's at Troy High School, not so familiar, and is quickly becoming a teaching superstar. She said, I'm incredibly grateful to you for being the first adult in my life to treat me like an adult capable of making choices about my own writing and my own creative directions. In your classes, I was allowed to fail, as long as I learned something from the experience. I became enthralled with the idea that my words could cause changes in my school, community, and world. It was the first time that I realized that my opinions weren't any less valid than the opinions of the adults around me. I took those powerful moments and experiences with me when I went to college. I studied journalism and English education because I wanted to inspire students the way you had inspired me. As I'm winding gradually to a close, I need to say some thank yous to many people in the crowd tonight. First off, thank you to the Waterford Foundation Board for taking the time to get to know me as a teacher and a person. This was not my first time through the process, and as I mentioned at the panel interview, I really enjoy chatting with them every few years. I'm sort of going to miss their question sessions, so maybe we can get together for coffee or something. They give of their time because they love Waterford, and we're a much stronger district because of this wonderful group. I was going to thank Joe and the people at Suburban Ford, but I don't think Joe was here. And then I had a joke, so I'm just going to tell it the way I would have told it if he were here. So I was going to say, thanks to Joe and the crew over at Suburban Ford who have given me an unbelievably cool car to drive for a year. I can't believe they're going to let me keep it for $100 a month. That's awesome. Still a bit. Thanks also to the other 3 finalists. 2 of them, Jennifer Nye and Julie Gross, I haven't had the pleasure of knowing as educators. So I asked my students to share nice things about them. One of my newspaper staff writers, Bridget Ekus, summed it up by saying that both teachers have an amazing ability to connect to their students. It's almost as if they were one of us, she told me. Thanks also to finalist Monica Banlow, who I do know pretty well, and I'm hoping doesn't beat me up after this. She is an unbelievably good math teacher. The kind of person who may have actually gotten me to like math when I was struggling through geometry my sophomore year. Just today, in fact, during my 5th hour, I overheard a student say, "Oh, Mrs. Banlow is my favorite teacher!" And I was like, hello, I'm standing right here. Right here. It's a true story. Thank you also to my parents, Doug and Judy Powers, who helped me become the person I am. My mom fostered a love of learning in me and my siblings that I can't seem to shake. Thanks to my Aunt Jane, who has always encouraged my passions for writing and literature. Thanks to my sister-in-law, Jen, who allows me to read her work, which is awesome. Thank you to my cousin-in-law, Chelsea McGee, who made her first appearance in my life when she was just 4 years old, my daughter's age, and who we are now borrowing from the United States Coast Guard for a couple of days. Semper Paratus. Did I say it right? Speaking of kids, thank you to my son and daughter for being awesome and inspirational and finally leaving us alone for a nice meal. We didn't bring them. Thanks to a plethora of administrators at Pennery and at Central Office, including Jeff, Carly, Ken, Shelley, Board of Education, Superintendent John Silveri, all of whom have always seen and appreciated the value of our journalism programs. Thanks to my colleagues and students, past and present, especially Jessie Sutherland, who challenges me every day to become a better teacher and a better person. She put more work into making this award a reality than anyone, including me. Thanks to my former student, current colleague, Jana Selk, who makes me proud in countless ways and has written many a beautiful letter on my behalf. Thanks to my current students, Jake Alessi and Chris Haba, and my honorary editor, Jake Plotz, who have seen me at my best and at my worst, and for some reason still want to stick around as editors. And finally, thanks to my wife, Lee Wilson, who can teach circles around me, and is truly the most amazing educator I've ever met. I am in awe of her abilities as a teacher, and I hope that one day I can be half as good as she is. I leave you today, at long last, with one other alumni shout-out. This one is from Lori, who manages a fashion business and is building her clientele in the Miracle Mile in Chicago. She said, "One of my favorite memories was how you started every class sharing a story or a joke and then open it up for everyone else to share. I do that every day with my team to build morale and trust." Then she said, "Congratulations on your achievement. You're the bomb dings. Holla!" Which I hope is true, even if I'm not entirely sure what it means. But I've tried my hardest to be the bomb digs. Holla! And I hope that I've turned at least a few of my students into that as well. Keep challenging and questioning, keep fighting the good fight, and pushing for a better tomorrow. Thank you all.